all this wealth should be used to conduct more force to minimize this friction in the world. And that is the purpose of wealth.
People don't realize that art is not just where you sit down and you get colors and a piece of paper or you start acting. We're doing it every day. When we get up in the morning, that's an entire choreography. When you brush your teeth, you go to work, you start your car, and then you get your food, you come back home, have an argument. It's reality. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to say you have a sparkling day in the sunshine, right? That is raw life, and it's repetitive. So we're in a generation that is getting very bored very easily. They're very restless. Why? Because of their inability to accept that emotions change and it's just a state of mind. I'm not a doctor and I don't claim to be. I speak through experience and through a whole bunch of mistakes. Which I am very grateful for. So
and those are the voices I listen to, just so you know, because I think theory holds a lot less weight for me than experience. Welcome back, everybody, to part 2 with Tani Gill. We're talking about Jupiter's ghost. And Tani, let's get into the next question. And then from Cambridge, let's go to UNESCO. How do you get into that? What happened?
UNESCO started, so I did a lot of charity work with education, especially in line with education in India. The academy or the place that I was affiliated with used to have started the school for gypsies were targeted a lot, like in impoverished areas. They were always secluded and, social stigmas, religion, caste, and it's unfortunate, but it is their reality. So my mother and I were heavily involved with giving these underprivileged children, a place to study, to take a shower, bath, food, and all this. We're not getting anything. Nobody even knew we were doing it, actually, to be quite honest. And it's when I came here, I was talking about it with a professor from Athens University, and he mentioned that he studied with the founder of CID, which is basically a branch stems from UNESCO. And it was through their recommendation. So I think my excitement was finally someone is coming to me, because I've spent my whole life chasing others to see, please give me a chance. Just read this or watch this or, and it's exhausting, Ali. After a while you're like, why am I doing this? I feel like I'm just this court jester trying to get somebody's attention. But yes, and then individuals such as yourself who make the time, and it's just a selfless cause to shed light on people where we just want to be heard. That's all we want. Is we just want to be heard and offer this to somebody else, And
really I think that's what's going to make change in the world, is listening to the voices that are meaningful, that are emerging. Because I think the voices that have gotten us into the mess we're in should not be heard anymore. I mean, this is the outcome. You give somebody a job, you tell them paint this wall, and they're 3/4 way to finishing the wall and it's a disaster. And somebody else comes along and says, hey, let me paint that 1/4 for free. And if I do a good job, give me the job. And you give them that 1/4 and they do an amazing job. But somehow the world's designed in a way that person who did a horrible job on the 3/4 still gets to finish the job and gets paid. While that person who did an amazing job doing that quarter to show what they can do gets told, I'm really sorry, but I have to let this person finish the job because of some whatever reason that's tied into this capitalist purpose of it, right? And so I thought to myself, if I come out here and there are millions of voices that are just beautiful and amazing, And we can put those together in this basket. This basket becomes, wow, it becomes this place full of talent and hope and, amazing work and arts. And I really believe in the arts because that's where everything starts. You start with a thought, and thought is arts. And so, it's my privilege that when I started putting this thought into practice and manifesting it, that whatever you want to call it, you want to call it God, you want to call it the universe, you want to call it by any of the hundreds of names that we place on this force. This force kept bringing me around to all these people. I don't even go out and publicize it. I met you. Just
that's true.
through
I think
people,
it was just word of mouth, the power of word of mouth.
Yes, it is. And the person who introduced me to you got introduced in the same way through word of mouth. And then the person who introduced me to that person who introduced me to you was exactly the same way. And it just happens because there is this chain that connects everybody in that sphere, and I think it's a really powerful connection. And I love being here with people like yourself who are doing the actual work. All I'm doing is fanning. I'm just fanning the fire.
No, you're very humble. You're very humble.
It's people like you who. No. But yeah. And so with UNESCO now, what do you do?
So we get invited. A lot of the work is done in Paris. So where the headquarters are, and there are many. I mean, there are many causes. Once you're with UNESCO, there are many causes. It's up to you. And the usual advice is you automatically go into the field that you're already in. Now, I do get asked this a lot. How is it? Hang on, UNESCO heritage and things like that, historical sites, and then there's performing arts. How does that work? Whereas the thing is, there's science education. There's such a broad spectrum. And recently, I think over 6 months ago, they opened the arts page, which is on the UNESCO site, encouraging artists to have innovative ideas, tying mental health towards art and how art benefits it, right? So there are various, I'd say there's art therapy, then there's, I think, is it neuro art, or, Yeah, I think that you did a podcast with someone on that.
Yeah.
So and there is a science benefit between the two, because what really is art? People don't realize that art is not just where you sit down and you get colors and a piece of paper or you start acting. We're doing it every day. When we get up in the morning, that's an entire choreography. When you brush your teeth, you go to work, you start your car, and then get your food, you come back home, have an argument, you don't. It's reality. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to say you have a sparkling day in the sunshine, right? So that's life. That is raw life, and it's repetitive. So we're in a generation that is getting very bored very easily. They're very restless. Why? Because of their inability to accept that emotions change, and it's just a state of mind. I'm not a doctor, and I don't claim to be. I speak through experience and through a whole bunch of mistakes, which I am very grateful for. So
and those are the voices I listen to, just so you know, because those are the voices that can tell you how and why. A lot of doctors,
exactly,
they would have never experienced anything like what you may be telling me, but they will have studied it in a book in theory. And I think theory holds a lot less weight for me than experience in these matters.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of people say that, because I was, even with this Kings, I know it's a graduate life drawing class, but the individuals who go there are all doing, masters and PhDs and things that I cannot pronounce. And it is intimidating. When I was younger, I was, but now I think I have your mindset of, it's not, they're different types of intelligence. And I think that there's what works for you and what maybe works for someone else could be completely different, right? Some like it in a book. They'll give you sort of, long-fangled words to explain what a break is. But I think most people listening want to hear something that they can comprehend and understand. And it's about implementing it. Like we can
and relate
talk for
to.
hours, right? About,
Yeah.
oh, you should meditate and, oh, you should have a growth mindset, like Carol Dweck from Stanford University keeps saying. But we can get the books, but we need to do it. You need to do the work. And it's not easy because I've probably got laundry after this. And so does everybody with an Oscar or whatever PhD. And I think that's what this in UNESCO, my work is talking about mental health and how performing arts can help people understand their emotions explicitly, the ones that stem from trauma, because there is a science between those two for sure. You can say what you want, but you cannot avoid it. I mean, my parents keep saying, "Oh, I'm sure whatever happened to you, but bad is our fault," in a humorous way, right? It's always the parents' fault. And now it's your turn to be the parent. So we have a sense of humor, and it's so important to be able to laugh and joke about very dense things. Otherwise, why do we live, right? We have to be able to laugh a little. And that's, mental health issues. And I think the government giving funds towards the education sectors in particular, because that's where it stems from. Education. It's the next generation. And my husband's a primary school teacher, so he sees how the importance these children give during playground politics. It's crazy. One's buying shoes that the other one can't afford, or and then it's just that is their whole world. When somewhere else, students are lucky if they have one pair of slippers for a whole year. So I think that doesn't mean that you have to walk around feeling bad that you've got Gucci shoes. But okay, walk around in those, but what can you do for the others who don't have that privileged lifestyle, right? So going back to not feeling guilty about privilege, but do something with it, give back.
Yes. I really think it's, I always tell people the concept of money. I mean, you know how we're tied to gold as this, older form of money, before money, before currency, before the paper and the debit card tapping and all that, there was gold. And gold had value, and it still does today. But at the end of the day, gold is a conductor, which means it has this really amazing ability in the metals to conduct electricity and momentum and force and energy and all of that, right? And I think that's how wealth should be used. It should be used as the conductor, in a sense, minimizing friction. Because we live in a world where from the time we're born, not in privilege, we face friction all the way till the time we die. And we die with more friction than we have force to overcome. So we die with mortgages outstanding, with car loans outstanding, with debts, with health issues, with relationships that remained broken and we died and we never mended them. Those are all friction points in our lives. And we don't use wealth to, minimize that friction to a point that it's possible to. And whatever wealth there is, we try to bulldoze our way into something that doesn't matter. So, for the people who are not so wealthy, I mean, you walk around today a lot more than 20 years ago, and you see young people, and this is not to say anything bad about them, but it's become the culture. It's unfortunate for them. You see them going to a job that pays, $40,000 a year, and they're walking into that job with a $5,000 purse.
Yeah.
But that purse is somehow mandatory because they don't, they fall behind. I mean, when you don't have that, and when you can't present yourself that way, and when you can't go to the wedding wearing a beautiful dress, or even with guys, when you don't have the car, or when you don't have that confidence because you have the wealth, it builds friction on different levels. And so money has become so important But unfortunately, it's lost the value of its point to reduce friction. And in the wealthy bit, what's happened is people are now recognizing that, oh, I have money, so I'm special because I'm part of the 1%. Literally, a statistic I read recently, and I say it so often, it's becoming ugly, but 0.1% of the entire world's population has a net worth of over $5 million. $5 million is not a lot of money.
No, it's not.
It's not a lot of money. I mean, you own a house in many parts of the world today, and you already hit that mark, right? But so you're thinking, wow, but it's 0.1%. That's like 8 million people. That's the population of Manhattan, New York, you know? I mean, imagine that city is living Gucci, and the entire rest of the world is somehow in friction, whether it's extreme friction where they're dying because that friction is just stopping them in their track. And, you know, they die from hunger and starvation and stuff. Or it's a lesser amount of friction where you put in so much effort to take that one step forward, right? Kind of like never being able to pay your mortgage off because you never aspired to do that. And so, you know, the balance is gone. But that 0.1% that we're talking about, it gets even worse because, you know, then when you go from 5 million to 100 million, the numbers get so minute that it's negligible, right? And you think to yourself, all this wealth should be used to conduct more force to minimize this friction in the world. And that is the purpose of wealth. That and you know what? When Adam Smith and the early capitalist-minded economists talked about capitalism, because I went to school for this. You know, I've read the book, The Wealth of Nations, and the other essays that I had to read, because at that point, I didn't really care. You know, it was about getting the degree, so it wasn't interesting for me. But I still read all of those, and I wrote the essay, so I remember what it was. And then I went back to it later. But when I did read those, it was never, whoever has a genius idea deserves to have all the wealth of the city. No, it was, let's create competition so that we can fund this competition to get the best innovation so that the whole community can benefit from the innovation. So it was kind of like socialism with a driver. With with a stick to, you know, prod people to move forward faster, you know? And instead of a stick that hurts, instead of, you know, tyranny, he thought, let's give them a reward. Instead of, you know, Egypt and slavery and, you know, they built the pyramids. They were doing something right. I mean, that whole concept was frictionless because they built something we can't build today. So
it's amazing.
But the suffering and the pain that went into building the pyramids is not worth repeating that pyramid.
Right.
So Adam Smith is thinking like this at that point. He's thinking it's not worth rebuilding the pyramid in that method. But the pyramid was built, which means minds were able to build it. So there has to be a way to motivate these minds to build it without that aspect, without the hurt, without, you know, the slashing and the whipping. What do? Let's give them money. Let's, you know, kind of give them something.
I see that. Now, I'd like to, again, this is just I enjoy a good, healthy debate. Now, I have a problem with this too. Not what you said, but when equalitarian, right? Where, yes, let's just spread all the cash out, all the money out so that there's no poverty and eradicate it out. Now, how, okay, if you imagine a world without poverty, it's just, I don't know if that's possible. I think there'll always be a yin yang. There's always going to be, you know, the rich are kept rich because the poor are kept poor.
Well, I think... Not saying
that that's right, anyone.
No. It's not a matter of right or wrong. It's a matter of realism, okay? Let's get real here. Let's get out of the academic talk and all that, all the books they write and all of that. And let's get into the real world, right? Let's come out of that bubble. I'll tell you something. I think it's very feasible to have a sustainable poverty. And to me, sustainable poverty is you have countries in the world right now where you don't have to die from a disease that is curable. There are places in the world right now that you don't need to have money to have access to that kind of medication. It may not be the best. You're not going to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, okay? But you are going to something that's 90% there. Not 20%, 90%. But unfortunately, You're from India. I'll give you an example in India. There are hospitals in Mumbai that cost just as much as the Mayo Clinic, and only the Ambanis and people in that level end up in those hospitals, not the common population.
No,
then you come to a level where the state doesn't have enough oxygen tanks, so people have to die during COVID, waiting to get to the hospital. In the line outside of the hospital, people drop, they die. And that's because they don't have access. Mind you, the private hospital has room.
No,
you see, that's the kind of poverty that I'm against.
Yeah.
That's the poverty I'm against.
Agreed.
So when you solve that kind of poverty, I'm okay with one person having to be a janitor and get paid $10 an hour, and one person, has a lot more. Yeah. But also, at that point, there are life choices, life circumstances. There's many things that play a part. But no child that is born should be put into a position where they are trafficked, enslaved, hurt, used, abused, because somebody has to make more money.
Very true.
And it's not the average population. It's not me and you. It's the really wealthy people. Because I'll give you an example of publishing. I have a publishing house. Why do I have a publishing house? Because of this issue. So you go to the big publishing houses and you tell them, where did the paper come from this book? Where was it bound? How did it reach to where it did? Do you know if there were children in India or Bangladesh binding the glue by finger without a glove, by finger? And then they can't get fingerprinted anymore by the time they're 14, 15 years old because they have no skin. Do you know that? Can you tell me? And they say, no, they don't have it. If you ask them, they don't have it. That kind of poverty is unnecessary because, believe me, those big publishing houses, whether they're the university presses or Random House and those guys, they can afford to make a few $100 million less and pay people a fair, decent wage and be transparent in their methodology. That is not capitalism.
No.
That is inhumanity. That is crime. That is a crime. That's the poverty I fight. I'm not fighting. I'm not fighting. Everybody has to live in the Nizam's mansion. That's just.
I get that.
That's again going back to this ideology of I can write a paper about it, get an A in university. That's the only place I'll accept that because that's the mentality that accepts it.
No, absolutely.
But in the real world, I'm not fighting for that. Every palace will need somebody who will clean the windows. It'll happen anywhere. In the most. You go to any kind of society and it will be that way. Okay. But the truth is, we don't need to reach a level of crime so that I could live that lifestyle. And when we do that, that is where I draw the line for me. That's where I draw the line. I don't get involved in that. So I don't think it's a debate. I think everybody agrees with that, except for the people who are involved with that, So if you told me, look, Ali, I really don't care. Like, I need to drive a Bentley and wear these dresses, and that's the life that I want. So if I have to bring dancers from wherever who I've enslaved and trafficked and make them perform, so be it. It's the Bentley that matters. If you say that, you're a criminal. But if you say, it is. Ali, I put effort into it, and you look at J.K. Rowling. You when you learn of the story of how the book actually got to publishing,
I had so much more respect for when I knew her the life story.
Yes, irregardless of all the stuff now and her stance, women and trans people and all that. That's not part of this conversation. This conversation is focusing on this woman. She retyped 1,000-page books so that she can submit it to different places. And retyped and recopied them herself. And the poverty she lived in. And all of the things surrounding, like her personal life, family, I think
she was a single mom.
Yes, that's what I mean. When you take all of those things and you put it into a real perspective, and you look at 9 out of 10 other people in the same circumstances and ask them to produce Harry Potter. Ask them to produce one line from Harry Potter. That'll suffice. That's the end of the conversation right there. She deserves her reward, so to speak, for the effort, for the genius, for the talent, for so many different ways she deserves, right? Now, here's my other side of the problem. She deserves, that's great. But what can you do with $3 billion that you cannot do with $50 million? Because I was very wealthy at one point in my life. And I'll tell you this, I lived in Toronto. And I don't know about now because I haven't been there for about 10 years and it's changed a lot. But I can tell you in 2014, whether you were making $250,000 a month or $1 million a month, there was nothing more you could do with that money. Nothing more. I made both of those. There was nothing more I could do when I was making $1 million from when I was making $250,000. Yes, it changes when you're making 10,000 to 80,000. But there comes a point where there's no more difference in your life, unless you want to be psychotic, unless you really want to go psycho and gamble $100,000 a day. Well, yeah, there's always things you can do. But in a proper conversation, there's nothing more you can do. So do we really need that excess? Let's forget about taxes. We don't need the excess.
When
Let's
you
put
have
the excess somewhere.
When you've tried everything, what else is there? And I think that's probably why the sort of super elitist rich lean towards drugs or experimental.
They get into these kind of problems that they do.
There's
nothing to do.
Chasing that adrenaline rush. Because they've got access to everything. There's no goal. You don't need a goal.
And I live that. I speak from experience, just like you speak from experience, in your work. There was a time I used to fly to close places because I worked in, New York, for example, or Chicago.
Right.
Because there was no more for me to shop at Gucci in my city.
You've got it, right.
That's how crazy it became, and so I would fly on the weekend to New York to go and see what else there was there. And I'd get so upset if there wasn't more because I'm like, I came all the way here, you did,
But
and
I had all these... how you've gone full circle, right?
That was my life though, right? Yeah. My whole ambition was there. So I was that person. If I, if I would have made $1 billion, $2 billion, I would have been that person so disconnected from the world. But then I realized I have an addiction to money. I had to give away all of it. And I actually slept, many people know this because I'm comfortable saying it. I slept in train stations for a while.
That's amazing.
I went from giving away over $100 million to sleeping in train stations. And I built myself back up. And one of the reasons I built myself back up from there is because one day I want to tell people what Compassiviste did started in the gutter. It didn't start from being the son of so-and-so or being related to some royal family or having,
affiliations,
Bill Gates as my uncle or something like that. It didn't start there. Okay. It started in the same homeless shelter you're in, ma'am or sir. That's where it started.
So, you are the definition of what
if I can do it,
of being truly relatable and authentic.
Yes, because that's how you have to do it. I thought to myself, when I gave away the money, I had no concept of Compassiviste. There's nothing there, I was full of ego. I gave the money away to lose the ego, essentially. So I was not even in a place to think about people. But in my experiences, I learned, about all of this, and it mattered. So now, when I speak with you, that's why I say, when I speak with people, I see a mirror of myself, only doing grand things. Like, you have in less than a month, you have a show. There's a whole show going out. I'm not kind of, putting you on a pedestal or anything. It's a reality. You have a show going out,
I'm excited. Yeah.
Right. But you have that. And it's great. You're doing something. You're putting some energy out there. You're doing something that makes a difference in the world. I don't have that. I'm not doing that. I'm just sitting here telling people, hey, we can do this together. That's all I'm doing.
That's the thing lacking.
I'm clapping, I'm coming to your show and I'm applauding. And I'm saying,
oh no, you cannot just
come going out and I'm going out on the street and I'm trying to get more people to come and listen here and there and all these other places of these people doing it, because I think we multiply you by 1 million, right? Similar thinking people, like-minded people. I take you, and if I can multiply you by 10 million, 100 million people saying, you know what? I believe in this. I'm going to give £10. £10 a month for most people in the developed world is not a lot of money. That's £10 a month times 10 million people is the kind of money that gives us all the leverage to do all the art we want to change the world with.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Now, we can't rely on the billionaires because even if they do give, even if they're very generous, even if they're authentically generous, let's just say they don't have an ego. They're not going to come to me and say, Ali, I'll give you $100 million, but you're going to change the logo to this, because that's normally what happens. You get owned. When a wealthy person comes into your constitution, essentially, they own it. It becomes a tyranny. But when you go to the collective and every person's giving $10, their only expectation of that $10 or £10 is really the good work.
Yeah.
They're not sitting there scrutinizing unless you screw up. If you're a fraud, then, they're going to be hurt about what happened. And you're going to ruin the world for the rest of the world because now the next authentic person that comes around can't really do this because, there's problems. When I was in the field of finance, I mean, the Bernie Madoffs and these stories that came out, robbing billions of dollars of people's trust funds and, retirement funds and college students, college kids, their kids' college kids and stuff like that, and living a lavish lifestyle. Well, it's so much harder for somebody today to say, I'm a dentist, I'm doing well, I've saved up, $2 million. I'm going to give it to this person in this hedge fund to invest for me because they're going to do well. Well, I'm worried. Is this another Madoff? Is this another crime? So you ruin it for the world. You ruin that trust. So when I came into this, I came into it with the concept that we have to design it in a way that we can't even cheat ourselves because humans are corruptible. So this platform has to be designed in a way that it has no access to that. Yeah. So that's why the nonprofit arm came in for me. I didn't need the nonprofit. I was one person and I wanted to go out and put out in the world that, hey guys, give me money. I'm going to do good. Believe me. Trust me. I'm going to do good. Right. And that's all it was. I didn't need it. I didn't need the nonprofit. But now with the nonprofit, it secures the work against my own ego.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. Even if I wanted to now, I will never want it. But even if I wanted to buy another Lamborghini, I couldn't because I have no access to it. I only have access to promoting Tani and Robert and Tom and all these other people with what I'm trying to do in the world. Right. So it forces the authenticity. And that is all I do.
It does. And it gets almost addictive. I don't know about you, but like just when you start seeing the benefits of how you've helped someone, I'd rather help one person than something like 100 people or 1,000 people. If I can just change one person's life for 5 minutes, I've done my job. So I think that this platform that you've started, I think, it's really huge. And I don't think it gets the credit it deserves. It's already huge. And I don't know. I just think one day I will be saying that I got to be on this podcast.
No. One day you're part of Compassiviste, so it's not being. Compassiviste is a mentality. It's a mindset. Yeah. It's not a club. It's not a membership. It's not a privilege. It's a mindset. You either are a Compassiviste or you're not. To me, when people say I'm Christian, I'm Muslim, I say no. You follow a set of rules.
Yeah.
But what are you? What are you really? Because. Jesus, I mean, the guy had nails. Back in those days, there were hollow nails. They weren't even sharp, hammered into his hand.
They were like literally metal things.
Yeah, to make a hole with that kind of a nail and for him to forgive while this is happening because he understands that they understand they don't know what they're doing. That is too much pain for me to be able to handle. So do I want to be like Christ? No, I can't. I know I can't. Right, but do I aspire to follow in that direction as much as possible? Maybe I want to be that forgiving. Maybe, many examples in history from all religions, all parts of the world. I can, come up with examples from Buddhism, from Hinduism, from everywhere.
And it's logic, isn't it? Don't be mean to your neighbor or, don't bring harm to sons. It's just common sense. And I think all religion, it was either, created, some say by the gods, or if it was created by man, it's it's to self-soothe, isn't it?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think being a spiritualist, it gives me the benefit of being, I wouldn't say on the fence, but not
you can
just
distance yourself from the lies.
But yeah, it's almost like creating my own belief system.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's what true faith is, right? Because to me, I was fortunate enough to grow up in 4 religions. So in Dubai, Islam. Right. And now we had a family so it started this way. My dad went to India once. And this was, in the late 70s. And my dad goes to India, and he had just made money. I mean, Dubai was just happening. Like, it was the first $1,000 that people were starting to make, right? And so he makes a little bit of money. He goes to India, and he goes to a hotel, and he loves the food. Who's the chef? This person. He says, do you want to come to Dubai and work for me? And I'll pay you more. That chef says, okay. He comes over, and, he comes into our family home, and he becomes my dad's, essentially the chef of the house.
Yeah.
And so he says, but I have a wife. And he says, okay, so bring her over too. And he says she can manage the household, all the domestic work and all that. Okay, fine. Then they had, then I was born, and then they were with us through that whole time. So for me, they were family.
Yeah.
And I learned Indian geography from there, because they spoke Malayalam, and they were from Kerala. They were from the south. And so I started learning. I became racist Indian from them, because, they don't like the Northerners, and they don't like the Northerners' food. So I started knowing that this is the good food, that's the bad food, that's the bad people, that's the good people. So I unknowingly had, this prejudice against the Northerners. So a Punjabi person to me was a bad person, without even knowing anything.
To me too, and I'm Punjabi.
But you see, I had no clue what the Punjabi was. And so I learned there, and I learned a lot about Hinduism, because the gods, the prayers, and all those things.
Yeah.
And so I grew up with that a little bit. Then, in boarding school and everything else, I grew up Catholic, because the school was like that. And then I went to Canada, and I was in this immersed space of Jewish people in the neighborhood that I lived in, the school that I went to the point that I learned so much about them, because I had some very close friends that I made in university who were Orthodox Jewish. And they have very strict lifestyles. They're like very strict Muslim people, right? And so, and also some of the Hindus, some sects of Hindus is so difficult, like the food, everything. And even the prayers and the temple times and all those things. And so I learned all of those things. And so one day I'm thinking to myself, they're all the same. They're all also the same in a bad way, that they control society. That is the danger. So when I'm giving to the Catholic, when I take money from my pocket and I put into the hat that's going around the church, and it's going to the Catholic Church, how many more societies am I, helping these guys to oppress? How many more residential school incidents? How many more children's getting raped? When I'm giving to this temple in India, for example, who tells me they're going to build a school for the impoverished and whatnot. No, they're not. And how much more caste differentiations are they causing? With all of the astrology, and don't let your daughter marry this person because he's from this caste, and the moon doesn't align, and they're born in this month, and all these things. They love each other. They've been dating for 3 years in school. Like, let them get married. No, you cannot get. And then and then problems. Like, some people actually go through depression, suicide, all those things, because some guru somewhere to make money said, this marriage, I don't see it.
And they take it very seriously.
Yes, they take it very seriously. So in every pocket, I realized, there are these issues in Islam everywhere. There are these bigotries that go on, right? And I said, I got to distance myself, but I'm going to take all the beauties of it.
Absolutely.
I'm going to take all the beauties of all of this. Yes. I'm going to take all the love that all of these guys came up with, because I'm pretty sure if Jesus came to earth today and he said, where are my Christian people? And they took him to the Vatican. He said, no, where are the Christian people?
Yes.
That's going to be his
that's going to be a big
response,
kicker,
right? Yeah. So, that's where that goes with that. Now, let's get to Jupiter's ghost. Tell me how that started for you.
I
You
think
were in the pandemic.
our backgrounds are so similar. It just makes me feel like I'm going to be just copying what you're saying. So I grew up in a family with so many different religions. Some we followed, some just sort of we married. I'd say we married into. So right from a young age, my parents we never even had like massive conversations about religion of, do we pray before we sleep, or do we go to church? Or because I mean, my great grandmother was Scottish, so I had what we used to call Anglo-Indian. When you're mixed, you're half either English or so. Yeah, we grew up with that sort of outlook. So there was never temple in our house, like a lot of Hindu people have a temple room as such. We never had that, but we were never told you can't believe in a religion. And my mother made it a point to take us to church, take us to temples, to Buddhist shrines when we travel, and not just like in a loose, learn about other religions in a loose way. She was very, very particular about, you need to respect other people's beliefs. And there's respecting it because you have to, because, officially, academically, it's just like a must, right?
Right.
And then there's actually respecting it because you
choose to.
Because you choose to. And the real challenge is when you fall in love with somebody who's religious and you're atheist, right? Or, because I was saying, why do I have to? Why do I have to learn this? I'm going to school too. I've got a lot on my plate. And I think learning all these things from a young age, from those who didn't believe, would talk about space exploration and future of humanity, and all these words were sort of ingrained in my subconscious. So during the pandemic, I just had a lot of time to mull over all pictures, and these are pictures for the new generation. It's on a piece of paper and it was printed.
Wow.
And you can actually hold them. Just in case that, I think, we didn't flick.
Yes.
There wasn't flicking albums back then. We had to turn the pages. So I did. I bought it just felt like a museum, vinyl records from my grandfather. And I just started writing in my diary that today I put on a record. And Jupiter's ghost was, again, as you said, I had so many of us had lost faith and hope. But the thing is, when we're on the precipice, like when we're right there about to fall, that is when humanity will do anything to survive, because that's why we call it survival instinct. And it was my instinct to brainwash myself into bringing that hope back. And I always had tumultuous relationships. I mean, don't we all, with whether it's a family member or a thing. So of course I'd be lying if I said it doesn't contain characters from my family or friends and my life. I mean, that is my story. I'm not going to pretend to tell somebody else's story, which we do. There are a lot of scripts where I'm like, where did you get this from? Well, it's what people want to hear.
Yes.
It's a mixed couple and they're having a baby with a gay man, and because it's what they're doing.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong in anything that you've said. It would be a wonderful story if you were that mixed couple, or if you knew the gay people, or whatever it was, right?
If it wasn't fiction.
Yes. Yeah.
No.
And that's why I like Jupiter's Ghost, because it's speculative, but it's also, I could have written it as a factual biography, but I'm not one of, I just think navel grazing is a bit too self-centered. You can tell your story. I think providing people can be like, oh, me too. I also have epilepsy, or I also feel that way, or I don't get along with my dad. And that's what it's about. It's about this scientist's love for his son, and he's just looking for a cure, and what you wouldn't do to save somebody that you love. Whether it's a husband, wife, or two men or two women, love is relatable to any race, anyone, right?
Yes. To everything, every life. It happens in animals. We forget it happens everywhere.
Yes, it's true. There's storks, seahorses, they stay with the same mate for so long.
I know.
Yeah.
And some of them have preferences. Like, when you study about animals, you learn that there is this cognitive, understanding of appreciation or liking or not or something. You see two dogs, when they see each other, they're so excited and they're playing and everything. And then you see two other dogs, they see each other and they're like, oh my God,
they're like, no, I don't like you.
And if they're allowed or they're trained to be aggressive, they will be. And if they're trained or not allowed to be aggressive, then they'll just not interact with that other dog. So there is a certain thing there, and so we take that into consideration. And so you write, and you now have this script. Let's call it a script. You have a script, right?
Yeah.
You have a script. What happens next?
It actually, before it became a theater production, it actually was a film, or is a film, present tense, that we created with the Cambridge University Botanical Gardens. So I was approached by a lecturer called Nabil Ali, and he, a very unique person, sort of half academic brain and half artistic, and imagine them melding. Wow. So because not many academics want to work with artists in Cambridge University, and it's not I'm not being mean or discriminative about it. It's just a fact, because it's a very different type of academia. I mean, art history is as artistic as it gets. I'll be honest. It is the way it is. So when he proposed to use his work that he does with traditional dyes, he says it's very boring. It's just, I love it, but to the common person out there that deserves to know about this amazing history of how the history of dyes and the process using natural plants. But it becomes, let's be realistic, after 5 minutes, everyone's snoring, even the students. So I want to do something that would benefit and allow people to carry this with them. So the costumes that I'm using for Jupiter's Ghost, I used using his dye methods. So they're all organic. And that itself has brought the fashion world into it. They're like interested. So that's great. That itself was organic, because they came to me going, we'd like to be involved. I'd like to design it. I've done very eco-friendly prints. So it's this script, when it opened, it became a film, and now it's completely independent. We did not go with any company. I employed every freelance employer there is. A lot of them, it's their first step, but they are brilliant. They're so good that people are actually surprised that, how is it that you don't have like thousands of followers or a massive company? Yes. Okay. Like I would say the weighty things like production and editing are done by freelancers with experience, but still, we didn't sell out. And, I just pushed all the funds towards everybody who was working on this project. And that it's true. Like, nothing. I don't want anything from it. So, and I want to keep this going. So I do need, I think this is coming to an end of a production, whether it's movie or theater. You're always looking for your next big break.
Yes.
Because no, I'm not going to sit here saying I don't need money to do what I do. But I want people to be like, where is it going? We need to see it. And the great thing, right from the sound to the costumes to these wonderful actors who are such beautiful people. That's why I employed them, because I love the people that they are first, and second, because they can do the job. That's my work ethic. I need to get along with you. And I know that many businesses where I don't need to like you. I
just need you to do the job.
Yeah. I mean, they're all different religions, different political beliefs, and that's fine. It doesn't interfere with our work. So,
and it may even be healthy. I tell people it also can be healthy, because when these people interact in a civil manner and they can do the work, because in the art and in the work, they are performing well, it begins to humanize each other for them, so this person, let's just take extremes. You have a racist white person and you have a black person who doesn't like white people because they think all white people are racist. you get those two people working together, all of a sudden they see this humanity within each other, and they start, reducing from the edges, and they start kind of coming sort of middle ground, and they start respecting each other.
Yeah.
And then after that period is finished and they go on with their lives, in the future, they change.
Yes.
They start, they change. And that is some of the, best parts of how you're picking people, because you're helping people change while you're paying them to work. You're not only feeding them, but you're feeding their souls.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm constantly saying that, mistakes are not a deal breaker. Like, the more mistakes, the better. And they're like, how does that work? Like, you don't want to mess up during a deadline. I was like, you can't predict that. Can you predict that you're not going to mess up during a deadline? Can I predict that? Of course not. But it is how we react to that. Are we just going to sit and sulk, or, be like, oh God, I'm losing my job? I don't want people having that mindset that you're going to lose your job or something is going to happen, right? Because I have people above me to answer to. But I think it's just, again, I'm sorry to be like a stuck record. I keep going back to Carol Dweck because I studied so much of her during the pandemic. But the growth mindset, it really does work. I don't read everything. I don't believe everything I read in a book, no matter who it's by. But when I implement it, and if it works, I'm like, brilliant.
Right.
So, yeah.
I get it. Now, ideal world.
Yes.
June 22nd, 23rd.
Right.
You have your show. What do you want to achieve from this?
And you're there, most importantly. And you're there.
Sorry?
I just said before I answer the question, and you're there at the show.
I hope so. If I can be there, for sure, I will be there at the show. But what is it you want to achieve from the show? What is the goal for you from the show?
I think this time around, it's creating a place where there's always a divide between everyone, like social, economically, right? Cultures. There's always a divide. Now, in theater, there's also this constant divide between actors are on stage, are there, and we are over here. And there's no interaction. Now, I'm not talking about the theater shows that are designed to be immersive, where they interact. Right. But it's where you can take something back with you that might change the smallest thing in your life. The amount of promotion and marketing in shows of, you go back and you think differently about climate, and you'll go home and you'll become more diverse. I mean, that's how we're sort of pushed. And we need to be realistic. With too much information, you're just bombarded with so much. You don't know where to focus, right? And you just go, wow, that was just really great. Or I didn't understand that. So I think with Jupiter's Ghost, sometimes the simplest things, and that's why it revolves around a very simple relationship about love, and how love sees no gender and ethnicity and anything like that. But, the fact is that without giving too much away, the audience are either going to say, I cannot accept this. That was amazing, but I cannot accept it. Or they're going to go away thinking, okay, we really need a part 2, or we need to do something, right? It feels almost like, those interactive games and papers and magazines back in the day, where for children you cut out a doll and put the clothes on, where it's not just paper, it becomes something else. So this is not just a show. You don't just get to take a flyer back home. It's actually, I'll say it now, it's a trilogy. So there'll be a part 2.
I did not know that. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that here.
That's all I will say is it's a trilogy.
That's a shocker.
Yeah.
Okay. So then it's a trilogy means we will have to talk about this again after part 2. So we'll do that.
Yeah.
Fair enough. And I have one last question for you.
Sure.
Being that Jupiter's Ghost is about the world, it's about a lot of things touching on our world. There's mental health, there's technology, there's the future, there is climate, there is social issues. There's just so much, right? And coming from an angle of love and compassion. What, writing this, having this show, all of this aside, what are your thoughts on the future? Not long, just what are your thoughts on the future? I mean, are you hopeful about where we're going? Are you scared about where we're going? Do you think we're reaching anywhere? Do you think we're just going to fizzle and end? Is it where are we? What are your thoughts? What do you predict? Yeah, prophecy.
Oh my, to predict.
Yes.
But okay, yeah. I'd say the future is upwards. It's to the skies. That's the first thing I'd say is we've read everything we can and we've done everything. I think we've exhausted everything possible to save Earth. I think invariably, whether it's another virus, a rock, or something or the other, it's inevitable, right? But in the short future, I think I can see myself maybe with my first grandkid, I don't know, watching TV and people, landing on Mars. I do see that happening. Realistically, I'll be on a island with non-alcoholic tequilas because I'm epileptic, watching that TV show. But because my family are watching, I have to say that I'll be surrounded by them and a nice cozy fire. Okay. But again, I bring humor into everything. I think the future is going upwards, and it's not. Is it possible? It's now. It's just a matter of time. It's when the time is right. And you can fight it all you want, and people need to remember that someone will always misuse something that is designed for the greater good. Mm-hmm. Okay. So there are many people who invented amazing things who I don't necessarily really like what they're doing with their other side jobs. But I have the ability to put everything aside and be like, well, this works. This guy managed to build a rocket that went to space and came back and landed on X marks the spot. Mm-hmm. Do I like the other things he's doing? No, not so much. Mm-hmm. But if he can cure diseases or start paving the way to, he's already made Jupiter's ghost a reality with part of one of his inventions. Which I can't say more because I'll give away the show. So it's a matter of time. Soon, yes, things will become.
And I think it's a matter of people, based on what you're saying, it's a matter of people accepting change.
Yes.
And there's, again, this huge friction for change, right? We see it in our cultures. I mean, we see it most in our grandparents. They're so hard to change. And
it's difficult.
It's difficult, But the resilience to change is what's hard. The newer generation embrace change so quickly. So, people in their 20s today, social media is very normal, everyday thing for them. People in their 60s, it's still, work. It's still effort. It's still so much to go through. So, it's just a matter of being able to adapt so quickly that creates that confusion and that friction. But I believe in what you're saying too. I think mostly though, because we are maybe beyond the point of correction on this planet. To change, we need this radical shift, really radical. And that radical shift superimposes ideas and manifestations that nobody will accept, from tearing borders down physically to many other things that we need to happen for the world to fix itself, and changing our whole economic system and wealth management and all of that. That's impossible. Like, it just won't happen. So I think, because of the failures that we are unwilling to correct because of our ego and because of our kind of oppression ability, we are going to look for an escape. Because that's what people do, People try to escape from their mistakes. Because you know what? I've screwed up so much here that if I just leave and start over and do it right the next time, it's so much easier than fixing this. Yeah, we learn from our mistakes, but then we're also not good at accountability as humans.
That's true.
Humans are really bad at accountability.
It was their fault, or it was my great.
It was always something else. It was everything but me, right? And so that's why nobody's willing to say, okay, let's just fix the earth. It's good. We can rebuild it. We can no, let's go somewhere new and we'll know not to do this again. No accountability, no blaming and all that. So, hopefully, I don't know, in a few generations, the only thing that I mourn, from now is the loss of nature in a sense. Because when I look at all these worlds that they've gone to so far, and I look at all these planets that are within my million light year distance that I can even conceive of, there's no Earth. There's no kind of, waterfall, nothing like that. It's Mars. Mars is ugly. I'm sorry, but Mars is ugly. Okay.
I mean, aesthetics. Yeah, you're not going to
Plus, I'm not even going to be able to enjoy the planet. I mean, it's kind of like living in a building.
We can recreate our own ecosystem and start growing plants and recreating another Earth. Yeah. It's possible.
Right. With technology, it is possible. I'm not saying it's not, but it just takes so much. Think of all the effort you're going to put into doing that. Okay.
Right.
But you're not willing to put like maybe less than half the effort to fix the earth.
That's exactly. I think Ali could not have put it better.
That's my issue. I'm sitting here thinking, you've got these literally hundreds of billions of dollars invested, NASA and all these other corporations and governments to send me and my, dog and my blanket that I'm going to bring with me to Mars and give me this whole space. And what? I'm going to live in a cubicle and, it's going to be like living in a building that has a mall and a supermarket within the building. You never leave, right? I mean, your elevator up and down. That's all I'm going to see. I'm not going to get to go outdoors, nothing like that, but I'm going to be excited because I'm on this new planet. No, I'd rather you give me half of that money and make some policy changes so that we can all live happily ever after here, but we don't do
you're
that.
Absolutely right.
And do the rest. I'm not saying don't do it. Let's explore Mars. Let's create technology that will put us at those warp speeds that will get us to another habitable planet and another galaxy that is similar to Earth, that we can actually breathe, and there's a river and there's water and there's other things that we are accustomed to. And we were born for that. Our evolution did not create us to live on Mars. It created us to live within this ecosystem.
Right now.
Right here. And within certain spaces of it. We're not meant to live in Antarctica or the North Pole or anything like that.
We're not.
We don't have the measures. We're not polar bears, right? Yeah. So we now have the technology to buy the jackets and stuff to move up there and the heating systems and all that to live there. But it's not comfortable.
No.
We are made to live in the 20 to 40 degrees Celsius temperature, no pollution, natural whole vegetable foods. That is our ideal makeup. Yeah. That's where I want to be. I want to be there with water because that's 70% of my body.
Exactly.
I want to be in that surrounding. Can you give me that on Mars? No, you can't.
Late. It's just a capitalist world. It's too late. We are so programmed that even the average person sort of earning like 500K a year, they enjoy their work and then coming home and then going on their holiday, it's believable. That's what they're used to, I mean, we're inundated with so much news with what we're talking about. It's sort of in one ear and out the other. And that's why I think it's too late for this Earth. But the next gen should be watching this and being like, well, thanks for messing it all up. But next time, I hope we get it right,
Okay, now here's a twist. We go to Mars.
Yeah.
We're there for a little while.
Uh-huh.
Okay. What do you think is happening on Earth?
What do you mean? It's going to take probably 8 years to get to Mars or something like that. No, sorry, 8 months. 8 months.
No, let's just say we're there for 200 years.
Okay, we're there. All right.
We're there for 200 years. What's happening to Earth? Because if we remember the pandemic, just a few months in India, just a few months of people not driving in the cities.
Yeah.
I had friends of mine who were in Hyderabad, and they were taking pictures of the mountains that they had never seen in their lives from the roof of their homes.
Right.
And they're like, I've never seen this in my life. I'm 27 years old. I'm a photographer. I've never seen this in my life. And I've lived in the same home. And now there's no pollution.
Yeah.
They were able to see it. You know, in Mumbai, other friends of mine were saying other things. In Delhi, they were telling me other things. And some of my friends were shooting videos of wildlife going through, you know, their home, their gardens. And, you know,
I remember that.
And so, and these were like personal videos they were sending me, right?
Maybe that's what Earth needs. Maybe Earth needs
it needs us to leave. Yes, it needs us to leave. It needs to heal.
It needs to heal.
And then we can come back.
And
we can come back
again.
The same thing that took us there.
My disdain with humanity. I mean, that's why.
But the problem is when we come back. Is there hope in a humanity that has been cooped up there? Yes, you can build plants and you can build fake rivers and all those things, but they will always be fake.
Of course,
you know,
of course.
I lived in Toronto.
You can't make Earth again. You can replicate attributes of it. But nothing else.
I love the smell of sweet olive trees. I love the look of orange trees. And in Toronto, you can't have those because the winter doesn't allow it. I used to have them indoors. It's not the same because the beauty of it, you know, when you're, for example, New Orleans has a lot of olive trees. And when you walk there, there's the scent in the whole city, you know? And so when you walk there and it's out in nature and you can smell it, it's just a different world than having it sitting in a humidified room that I can just see. And after I did all of that expenses and it put the orange tree there and now it's got some oranges hanging from it. And I was like, this is not what I want.
No, it's not.
I want the orange. You know, when I was in Spain, I was in Seville and other places, you see these orange trees all over with oranges falling to the ground and, you know, people just picking it off the tree. And all these orange, huge, you know, fields of orange trees. That's what I'm talking about. So replicating it with money is never the, you know, the nature.
No,
nature
but I think
is just so much.
We could use that so that Earth can replenish and, as you said, heal itself.
But then after it heals itself, do we come back?
I would go with what Sir David Attenborough was saying in his, if you might have watched his Netflix documentary, he said that the problem with humanity is there's a lot of good, but with a lot of good comes a lot of evil. And we have absolutely no control over it. So you're basically answering your own question is what he was telling us is, you cannot shift that. It is in our nature. The story of the scorpion and the tortoise, you know, I think, you know, crosses the river. Oh, but you promised you wouldn't bite me. I did. It's in my nature.
Right. Yeah.
So again, I think everything is better. I mean, right from the beginning of the interview when you said, you know, is it 1970s Tani doing that sort of very iron rod way of directing, or is it too cotton wool? It's that getting that sweet spot, the middle ground. And I think the same thing applies to if we did return after, say, a couple of 100 years, or however long this speculative future is, right? What would we do? I think the chances that we do half of both, ruin it, half of it, and go back to our old ways, because we always want better. We start with the bamboo house, and then we're like, you know what? Next time I'm going to use bamboo and this chemical mud, whatever, and then suddenly cement comes, and then slowly the city happens.
Right.
You know, but we're not going to be cavemen when we come back, obviously.
No, obviously not.
The temptation to start like that.
Right. And sadly, this is the case. Now, do you think, in an idealistic perspective, in a very romantic perspective, do you think that education can play a role? And I'm not talking about education that we have today, because schools today need to change. That's one of the biggest problems I have with the world. Agreed. Is that we are teaching kids the education that was purposed to kind of start capitalism in the 1800s, and we're pursuing that for them and pursuing the same system of university and everything else as well. We need to change to this holistic, meditative, spiritual education, to put compassion first, to put the world in front of them, and to grow with relationships, and teach that instead of the multiplication table, because we have the technology to multiply for us today.
Yeah.
I say that. I say, use the technology for that. When people say, I don't want my child on the iPad, all these stories. Okay. You don't want your child on the iPad. You're going to stop them from being on the iPad for 18 years. And then you're going to put them in a job that puts them in front of an iPad for 18 hours a day between their free time and their work time. So what are you really accomplishing? But you could have put them in front of the iPad productively instead of opening YouTube and let them do whatever they want on there. Productive iPad use, make music with it, draw, do something productive that grows your humanity, interact with things like that. Do you think if on Mars we're able to change our education systems to really create love on Mars, that maybe we can come back one day and bring that harmony with us? Or do you think that it's impossible? Because I think to myself, when we go to Mars, the reason capitalism won't exist is because it is already owned by the people who are taking us there.
Yes.
So it's already a pre-constructed monopoly.
Yeah.
There's no room for capitalism. Yeah. It's a tyranny. It's just a benevolent tyranny. So it's that kind king that's taking us there this time,
Yeah.
And so there won't be capitalism, because who dares open a store?
This journey, you're right. I think there will be. Because the very first journey that humans are going to take to Mars, as you know, it's a one-way ticket. So I think that itself is very humbling, and it's quite must be an incredible mind job for all the applicants. I think there was a young woman, 35, from Bangalore who applied, who had a young family of 2 and a husband, and she said, I'm applying, and she got in, Obviously, they're going to narrow it down from thousands to, like just a couple of them. But it is a one-way ticket. And I think we all are but guests here. We don't own Earth, but yet we walk around treating it like it's ours. It's not ours. We're just guests.
We actually don't even treat it like it's ours, because we cherish what's ours. We treat it like it's our garbage.
That is true. That is very true. And I think that mindset could possibly change when you're suddenly not there. And you're like, my God, I was there a few years ago. And then maybe their children that they have on Mars and their grandchildren, could have the hope of going back and seeing what their ancestors had to leave, had to abandon. Right. Because of them. And that's taking responsibility, accountability of your actions.
What depresses me, what's got me a little bit on the negative side of it and becoming more pessimistic about it is the parents. Because I have friends who are parents, and I see parents around the world when I go out into public places with their children. And I think, how much do you really love your children? Because the choices and decisions that you are making today while you're pushing that stroller with a, less than a year-old baby in it, affect the future of that child that's 40 in a very huge manner. I mean, if we're continuing the path that we are now, in 40 years, we're probably walking around with oxygen masks and things like that, because the pollution levels and, it's going to be disastrous. And the floods and all the climate problems and all of that. So then I see all these parents who are not making sustainable choices, not making conscious choices, just going about life like it's just, we just need to get through the next 5 days and it's over, but it's not. I mean, you have a child. If you were single and you had no family and it was just you and you were living this life where it's all about me, I don't care, I'm just going to waste paper, do whatever I want, and when I die, it's all over, and I know I'm not going to live 300 years. So you know what? I'm 40 years old now. So 30 more years, I'm gone. I don't care to do anything. I'll fly as much as I want. I don't care. But then you see families, they're going from India to Disney every summer with the children. They're going from India to visit their family in LA. Right. And the whole family's going.
Oh gosh.
and then you think to yourself, you're seeing what's happening worse almost than many of the other nations in the world. But yet, there's there's no connect.
No.
Neither in the developed countries nor in the developing countries. I mean, and it's difficult to blame because when you talk to people, we have programs. We're helping the Maasai people in Tanzania and other places in developing countries. And when I see them and I see their issues is really having dinner that night. Being able to have dinner that night. You cannot talk to a person about sustainable choices when they're like, it's either I see tomorrow and my child sees tomorrow or I die. Those are my only two choices. And to see tomorrow is not a sustainable choice. Well, how are you going to argue with that? And then you come to USA and it's different.
You're right. You're right.
Come to
and I think
England.
It's as you said, I think it still stems from education. And passing our fears down and insecurities when we don't know of something and have our only knowledge of it is in a book. There's only so much acceptance you can actually, pass down. And I say this because part of my family teach incredibly privileged children, like the elitist. We're talking, politicians that I can't even use their names. Their children are in the school. Celebrities. So there's that. And then there's me helping these gypsy kids try and just be fed a bit like the Maasai work that you do, right? And then you come home feeling so, I wouldn't say, like, I always feel that there's more that can be done. It's just never enough. There's like the next plan, which I'm sure you can relate to. So, I think the problem is their mindset. They just can't snap out of it. The privileged are so privileged that just giving to charity means maybe filling a couple of bin bags and taking it to the local Red Cross or whatever. So I think it's just their mindset that needs to change. And I don't think it can unless something really radical is done about education.
Yes. And that's the problem. The radical is hard to come around because we don't have that collective. We don't have the unity to speak out on the radical, and we don't have leadership. I find when I look back into history, recent history, because distant history is very different times. So when you talk about Moses, it's a very different story. One person going in and changing the entire Egypt, whether it's real or fable, doesn't matter. It's a different story. But when you talk about Gandhi, Martin Luther King, these are relatively new. This person was in London. Gandhi was in London. He had a law office. He practiced. He went to court. He came back. He leaves and he goes back and he says, no, I'm going to go see what I'm going to do. He has no clue what he's going back to.
Yeah.
The story is very glorified. I find more glory in the real version. Hearing it from family members, that I've met and stuff like that, who tell me my grandfather, for example, or, grand uncle so-and-so, he didn't know he was coming back to do this. He just wanted to come back and see what can be done. One thing leads to another. He mobilizes this collective, right? He mobilizes a collective. That's leadership.
That is.
Right? Where is that today? Look around the world.
It's scary.
When Martin Luther King happened, leadership was beautiful because he was able to make change, policy change.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
You look at today with disasters, with really, really difficult things to speak about. Black Lives Matters happens. And they get funding that Martin Luther King couldn't even dream about, even change to his dollar at his amount at his time, and platforms he couldn't even dream about. And not one policy change, not one law change, nothing, just money, and I buy a house in Malibu and that's it. That's the whole of it. Please, where is the leadership? You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think without the leadership, which is sorely lacking today,
it is.
There's no opportunity for those radical changes.
Where you see 100 steps forwards, politics takes suddenly it's a million steps backwards. It's just like right. It's
so that's why I start siding with you when I look at that and I see, well, yeah, you can have hope, but without leadership and community and togetherness and walking in one momentum,
Yeah.
there is no change.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that. And I'm not seeing people being able to do that. So it's very difficult.
People don't want to hear this conversation, Ali, and that's the thing. They don't want to, because why? Not because it hits home, because they know. And they don't want to be reminded of this.
Right.
They'd rather watch something.
They want to be in their ignorance. They'd rather be in their delusion and their ignorance.
Ignorance is bliss in the Matrix, they say.
Yes.
Yeah?
And you know what? As a final thought, I'll tell you this. There was a movie once. It's called The Book of Eli. And I watched this movie, and I was very fascinated by it because I didn't understand anything until he actually got to the place that he got to, and basically spoke the Bible. And I was like, wow, they are preserving our knowledge. This is what's happening in the aftermath, in the apocalyptic future, that we've gone backwards into these cowboy towns. They are preserving history and knowledge. And so sometimes when I give up, and like you, I say, it's worthless, right? I say to myself, but never mind, maybe I can gather all of the minds, and I can gather all of the arts, and I can put these all in one place, and I can give it to Mr. Elon Musk and say, please take this with you.
Yes.
Somebody will want to see it somewhere one day, and then that would be Compassiviste. It'll be Compassiviste. It'll be one laptop, it'll probably be a few TBs of, memory. And just give it to him and say, just take this. You don't need Wi-Fi. Just take it. Just press play. And you can see the whole history of what we could have accomplished. And please show this in the new school. Worst case scenario, if everything perishes, I live by that hope, which keeps me going.
Absolutely.
Which is what you
live a life worth remembering is what I was going to say. Yeah.
And you're doing just that. Thank you very much for being here. And thank you for speaking on Compassiviste Dialogues and sharing amazing insights. I want you to leave our audience with a thought. And I'm putting you on the spot. So come up with a thought.
Okay. I'd say you are. I think this is going to need a lot of editing, huh? Please edit this. Make me think immediately. Let's see. Final thought, never give in. It used to be my school motto in India. Never give in. It's just the power of will. Where there is a will, there is a way.
And you learned that from your grandfather.
Yes, I did.
See, I listen.
Yeah.
I remember you said that. That's
probably why we get along and I've been talking for so long.
I know. Well, thank you. Don't give in, people. And that is the Compassiviste motto. That is the activism in you. The action should be genuine, honest, and with compassion. So don't give in to all the conformity. Don't give in to all the conditioning. Be yourself.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you.
I encourage everyone to visit her foundation website, TaniGillDanceCompany.com, and find her on Instagram at TGDC26. Jupiter's Ghost is showing at the Cockpit Theatre in London on the 22nd and 23rd at 7:30. Be there. If you're privileged enough to be in London in those days, make sure this is what you're doing on one of those days. Subscribe to our podcast so that we can bring you amazing stories like this and share this with everyone in London and out, because Tani's story is a story that should be told. We're here to help change the world together with people like Tani. I'm Ali Horyat. Thank you.